that'll help. We'll call our 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And first thing we'll actually take up is our Bristol Pannell improvement discussion. I'll invite our city engineer and our partner from Warren Brugink to be waiting in the wings there.
So Steve Brown, who is here with me. When we left this project last time, we had two major questions. So when we left this issue last time, we had two major questions we had to work through. And one was to request a design exception to MDOT to ask that they allow us to put the bridge at 12-foot clearance instead of 14. And the other issue was to see if we decided to just give the grant back and use local money, would we still have to meet all those requirements, or could we build it however we want? And so we got bad news on both, but that's okay because news is still good. It still allows us to move forward in some way. So they did deny the design exception, and they gave us quite a few reasons that are pretty standard reasons. We pretty much knew that that wasn't going to get through, but I will give them credit for spending a couple weeks on it and really giving it some thoughts, so we appreciate that. And when they got back to us, they said, not only can you not do it at 12, but you can't do it at 14 either. It's got to be 14'6", which is a newer regulation that relates to reconstruction versus maintenance. So if we wanted to keep parts of the bridge in place, we could do 14 feet, but I think we all know that's not a good idea. If we're going to do it, we need to do it right. So the standard or the limit now is 14'6". In terms of could we build it locally with local money, because it involves the railroad, it would still involve MDOT's Office of Rail Safety, and it would still trigger that requirement to get to 14'6". So we had a couple quiet days after that, and then began to work to get this worked out. So one of the good things I think is during that discovery period, we talked to a lot of different engineers around the area. We talked to some key staff members, and there really was a consensus kind of building behind the scenes that we probably should give that a second thought about whether we wanted to build it that low anyway. You know, one of the key things I put in the report that I think is important is that the fire department's ladder truck is between 13 and 14 feet. And when you start to limit something like that and you think that's a 100-year improvement, it is time to take a pause and really think through it. And I think after meeting with police and fire and DPW, and again talking to a few other folks, it does make a lot of sense for us to go ahead and put that in the right way. And then some other reflections. I think we were really worried about the increase in truck traffic to the north. So we can't prohibit trucks through this intersection. But further north, where we've got a stop sign at Waldorf that's on a fairly steep grade, we've got a red light, traffic light at 3 Mile that's at a very steep grade, we can still keep that as a non-truck route. And from a realistic perspective, there's not too many trucks that are going to want to navigate that, even in good weather because of the steep grade. It's just hard to stop like that and keep moving in a big rig. So we feel pretty good about that. And we also looked at the businesses that are just on the north side of the bridge, and it's an opportunity to then tell them, your trucks have to go south. And so Sparta Sheet Metal, and there's a few other small industrial buildings there. I don't think it's real high profile stuff, but those trucks would then be directed to go south through the bridge and onto the truck network with Pannell to the east. So we have a little bit of an opportunity there. So we did give you the two estimates that are updated. Steve did a good job with the first time around of having a little bit of a factor in there of safety. So going from 14 feet to 14'6" didn't make much of a change. It was only a couple of inches because of the extra that he'd had in there. So you've got costs now for the two bridges that we you as a commission thought were the most desirable in our perspective, and that was the twin con span, which I think was a little bit more money, but had a really nice aesthetic to it to kind of help protect that vision for that area. And then one that was a little bit cheaper was the three-span steel bridge, which wasn't a lot to look at, but it was sure functional. So those are attached as the last 2 pages of our memo. And again, Steve and I are both here to answer questions and help you work through this, but I think we've got a pretty strong staff recommendation now that we'd like to try to find a way to work through this and make this happen and make this improvement real. Steve, is there anything you want to add?
Just one thing to add. Steve Gronin, Warren Brugink, the engineer in this project. We hope we have a very conservative estimates for these projects on two fronts. One is with COVID, you never know, but we've bumped costs up for 20% next year from what we think it's gonna be. Now, hopefully, that's a good estimate. And the other thing in there, we've got a couple $100,000, assuming the soil isn't real good, for some steel pile supported foundations. If the dirt's good and you can use spread footings, the estimates could probably be lowered by $200,000. So, that's all.
Commissioners, questions, discussion for either Scott or Steve?
Yeah, I'm lost in the memo.
The memo got emailed to us Friday email from Daryl.
Give everybody a minute there to grab that.
So I think we covered the memo pretty well with the summary. The last 2 pages are the pictures with the 2 different designs and the estimate, and then maybe that's the best place to focus our energy here forward.
So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Are we now kind of trying to decide which of these designs?
Well, we've been limited. Before, we thought we had multiple opportunities to go lots of different directions. We're really limited now. If we touch this bridge at all, it's got to be 14'6", which leaves us with, we had 4 options that we laid out the first time. 2 of them looked like they were pretty feasible, good ideas that I think there was some support for. 2 of them were not. So we upgraded the estimates for the 2 that we thought were the most interesting to this group, and that's the double con-span and then the traditional 3-span steel bridge. And I think last time we said, boy, that con-span's a little bit more money, but it really looks nice and would add a lot to that neighborhood to try to keep kind of the planning feel that we thought we were going to be able to keep with a smaller bridge.
Related to the 2 versus concrete versus steel, which ones tend to have less maintenance costs or easier to do maintenance on in the future?
You want to give your opinion first?
Oh, certainly the con-span, which is the more expensive option. But certainly the con-span
Is less maintenance.
is less maintenance.
Over
yes.
time, okay.
Yes,
So,
much less
so the steel requires cleaning and painting and all that. That's not to say that we won't be out, fixing up there's enough graffiti on the old structure that you gotta expect at some point somebody's gotta try something, but, that's pretty cosmetic.
And then what do we expect for longevity for both of them? Like the 2 different
50 years?
And the-
75 years, 100 years?
The last one made it 115
Yeah.
years, and we're not real impressed with it. So, our hope would be this is a multi-generational improvement that's gonna be there for a long, long time.
Does either of these versions have, is there one that is more pedestrian safe than the other?
I think as we talked about this at staff, the double con-span puts the pedestrians in less of a tunnel.
Okay.
Because it's much wider. It's got the car lane, and then you've got a curb, and then you've got the sidewalk up on the curb. So it's more open, but that could be debated a little bit too, because it's also closer to the vehicles, versus having their own laneway. But I think people generally feel safer if they're not in a little mini tunnel. So probably the con-span.
Thank you.
And to piggyback on that, it would probably help keep people out of the tunnel that shouldn't maybe be in there.
Less places to hide.
Right, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Acknowledging the, I don't know the daily traffic count in that area, but acknowledging there's a fair amount of traffic that does go through there, but it's obviously not one of our highest roads in the city. What does the construction look like for north and southbound traffic on Bristol and Pannell there? Because obviously, right now, it's a 1-lane squeeze. We're going to be doing a whole lot of work. There's just going to be, and this might be, I zoned out someplace in the notes, is it over 2 months that might not be accessible or partially accessible for a month, 2 months?
So we've estimated probably 10 weeks construction if it's a steel structure, 8 weeks if it's a con-span structure. I think that 8-week schedule could be pushed up dramatically.
Like favorably from
yes,
8 weeks?
yeah.
Okay.
If you remember the proposals, they said they could do it on a Thanksgiving weekend, like they did in Ada.
You still have to rebuild the road though,
Sure.
but I think you could do it in 6 to 8 weeks.
So then overall, what does this look like for the residents in that area then from a discomfort level? Quantifiable and quantify, I mean, there's gonna be a time frame it's closed, but are they gonna be able to get through for part of that time, none of that time?
We really haven't gotten into the detail of that. We always start off with the worst possible scenario so that it can only be better than that. And I would say the worst possible scenario here is a complete closure for 3 months. And we could certainly try to do better on the front and the back end there to limit that.
Okay, fair enough. Commissioners, other questions, comments? Do we have a bit of a straw poll here on what's the more desirable option of option 1 or option 3 that's been presented based on the feedback we gave the last time, but where we're at tonight then?
Mayor, if I may, just to follow up on that, the traffic comment, I would hope that we would be able to time this, maybe in the summertime when it doesn't impact the school, keeping that in mind.
Yep, no, very fair question.
And that's actually for both schools because there's two-way traffic there for folks from Grand Rapids going to the charter school and then also from the north, people going to the high school as well. So we definitely want to do that.
So preference, commissioners, actually indicate, that are we getting more comfortable of moving forward with this? Do we have a preference? If that's the case, do we have a preference as to which plan?
Just a couple things. The tunnel discussion we had a minute ago about the 3-span versus the con-span. I see the con-span it's open, there's no tunnel, but it's only a 6-foot sidewalk, as opposed to the 3-span, which is a 20-foot tunnel, 20-foot wide, so it's a big tunnel, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I still wonder about which side the sidewalks coming off of onto Pannell. And, I still wonder about that a little bit. It's a lot of money, but I don't see there's a huge difference in the price between the one or the other. It's the $2 million I'm worried about, not the extra 150. But Mayor, I guess most of my concerns have either fallen on deaf ears with MDOT or I've run out of objections.
Fair enough. Thought on the sidewalk? Without putting you on the spot too much here.
I actually prefer it to be off to the side myself, but I think I like the aesthetics of the 2-span, the way it fits in there. I think it just has more character. That's the difference between me, the artist, and me, the engineer, I suppose.
Well, fair. All right, commissioners, additional dialogue
And
input?
I think, if I recall, last time, one of the questions I brought up towards the end of this conversation was if we're going to take, and I think we're in the same spot, right? We're debating on some level if this is money that we want to spend as a city, that the grant would not apply to this project. Is that right? Or
Well,
am I
that's if
missing
we
that?
did not raise it up, which
Okay.
we are now raising it.
So we're back in grant land.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's in fairness, and I know one of the ones more adamant for about even having because we're doing this in large part because of the railway through there, there be some participation there, so to speak, because we're doing it for them. It really, for us, raising that bridge, we're gonna have to keep that railroad bridge there. It's a reality. But one of the things from a public safety perspective, that after further discussion amongst staff, this is brought forward that's a real issue, being able to get a ladder truck through there, height-wise. We would not be able to if we were not up to the 14 plus, so.
Okay, thanks. I just thank you for clarifying the grant piece.
Yep, no, good question. Commissioner Gilbert, First Ward.
This is an interesting one for me just because it's, I value the safety improvements, but at the same time I know that there's probably going to be a bit of a retching sound coming from the neighborhoods to the north of there. I'd probably want to hear feedback from the community before we started moving forward with anything on this.
Do you think very fair point, do you think the dialogue with the improvement of that not being a single lane anymore as opposed to wider, that there might be some trade-offs from the neighbors?
I think that that would be a good thing, but, I think that across the board, everyone's gonna agree that, having that two-lane traffic movement through there is better, right? Like, I drive by there pretty frequently around the hours where West Catholic is getting out, and it's chaos at times. That being said, even as we like have passively had these conversations, and even unsolicited at times, neighbors bring this railroad bridge up and not wanting truck traffic through it. And this has been a point, I understand your point, Scott, of like trucks aren't going to want to deal with the steep inclines, but trucks have just run straight into the railroad bridge, so it's hard for me to justify that they will have the foresight to not face those challenges. A lot of times the topography of those routes doesn't necessarily show up on those maps either, and folks just kind of drive where they think is the easiest path of least resistance, and even where we declare truck routes at times is kind of set to the side. So I think there's justifiably some concerns that are going to be had among those in the community, and I think that for my part, where I sit as First Ward Commissioner and knowing the neighborhoods a little bit, it'll be important to hear back from those folks before we get too far down the process for me.
Are you thinking an open house?
I think that'd be great,
Or-
up at Fire Station 3.
And that's part of why the sidewalk issue, if we had kind of had at least a vision of where we're going with the sidewalk because what I'm hearing from what you said in your opening remarks is we really don't have a choice. I mean, we're gonna have to upgrade this bridge, and we're gonna have to do it to standard. So whether we like it or not, it's gonna become, what I thought about, what I tried to raise as many objections as I could think about last time we had this conversation. But if we're gonna do it, because eventually we're gonna have to, can we have a plan for, okay, well, here's how the sidewalk's gonna flow, it's gonna be nice, and we have that sort of vision to present at the open house, so we can kind of get feedback on that and see if we're giving back something that helps the taste of it all.
Absolutely fair.
I'm thrown out as a starting point, input please from everyone of maybe one of the Monday afternoon things, maybe at 5 o'clock or 5 to 6 thing, allows people coming from work or otherwise, depending on their schedule, that they're able to get here during that time on a Monday afternoon.
I think we need to do something like we did when we talked about doing a peanut roundabout at Kinney and Remembrance. We had a lot of the constituents that came and residents that wanted to see what we were really looking at putting in that area, and we took their feedback, and there's not a roundabout there. So nevertheless, I think we need to give that Ward 1 that same opportunity to voice their opinion and their pros and cons.
Is this something that we could look at maybe from a mid to late May? We want to give some time here for people to schedule, but something we could do in May yet to keep us
Yes.
on a timeline?
Yes. Yeah, we can work with Daryl to find something that's gonna fit.
Okay.
We do a lot of 4:30 to 6 open houses, and just like you mentioned, it kind of gets, the people that have businesses can still stop, and the people that are on their way home can still stop.
Okay.
It's a really nice open environment,
Okay.
and it allows us to have a lot of one-on-one interaction, which I think is the most valuable too.
Okay. So maybe what we'll do is guidance back, managers chime in if there's anything you want to add to this. Maybe guidance would be if we can work on a date, either maybe ideally that May 23rd meeting, the fourth Monday, but the second commission meeting of the month. We have an open house, and maybe it's that 4 to 5:30, or it's a 4 to 6 type of thing.
Yeah, May 16th, we have our work session scheduled, so maybe that makes sense for that afternoon
Okay. In lieu of the,
work session. Or if
Okay.
we have one, we could have it afterwards if we need to have the work session.
okay,
It'd be great to have a meeting following that to choose a direction so we could get this going.
fair
That's
enough. Yep.
Scott, can you give us a reminder of the grant amount that we have for this?
It is around $700,000.
712,500.
What's that?
712,500.
712, okay.
All right, so at this point then, follow-up is we'll get the date set for an open house. We'll communicate that in social media, and I don't know about a mailing so much at this point because I don't want to be restrictive on a 300-foot radius. I'd rather this be on social media and maybe just ask all of us, particularly the first ward commissioners, to help share that as well and get that out there. That we're going to be looking at that, looking for resident input at that point.
Are we not required to notice?
Not necessarily for that open house. I mean, we could do it. The problem is I feel like we're going to be missing, you'd miss Bristol Woods, for instance.
If we operated it as a public meeting of this body, then we would have to notice it. But if we're giving it as an opportunity for staff to communicate with the residents to hear their feedback, that's where we don't need to, I guess, provide that.
And knowing we might not even have all of us there that night,
It's compulsory in attendance, not mandatory for all of us.
So we could probably have a special fabrication sign put up there as well for the people that regularly frequent that area. And they're the ones we want the most, right? So,
Oh, yeah, once we get the date and time set for that,
Yep.
get that up there. Maybe one north and southbound, if that's fair to ask.
we'll give that a shot,
DPW.
yep.
All right. Well, any other questions for either Steve or Scott on this topic while we're here?
Not to drag it on, but I know we have some, in a couple future years, we have some grant money for sidewalk along that stretch also, so that might be important to note that when we have that public meeting too. I don't want to remember those limits if it's from 3 Mile all the way south to Pannell.
Right, and I think that gives us a chance to satisfy Commissioner Burke's request to have a little bit more vision on the sidewalk.
Right.
Because we've tentatively said the east side, but we haven't had a ton of pro-con debate on that yet.
Right. So, I mean, really, there's two different projects there, but if we're having people there, it'd be good to inform them of everything going on.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have a huge list of projects, so we want to brag as much as we can, I think.
All right, we are good.
Thank
Scott, I
you.
know we're going to keep you for a while. Steve, thank you so much. You're obviously welcome to stay as always, so,
I'm off to Ada Township.
all right, have fun. Thank you. All right, commissioners, preference to whether we can attempt to get through some comments, or do you want time to read through the handout that was left in front of as a reference point on Cambridge Grove, which will be in front of us at the 7 o'clock meeting, or should we try and get through some comments from the elected body?
What about this administrative services agreement?
Consent agenda? Sure. This is from the company that administers our 401 and 457 plans. Used to be ICMA, now called MissionSquare. So we really never had a formal agreement. It just kind of operated kind of year to year. We used ICMA since we had a 401 plan in 1989 when we closed our defined benefit program. So we've been with them since then. They're fantastic to work with, but we had a meeting with them probably 3 months ago with their reps, and they're like, because your accounts are so large now, we have a better deal for you, if you will, for you and your employees. So they kind of rate our plans by this expense ratio that's in the memo from an R1 to an R5. So if you have an R5 plan, your employees don't get charged as much when they buy and sell stocks through their program. Not to get into the details, but it's a better deal for our employees and everybody if we go into this new plan, this new agreement, and they want to give it to it or lock into a 5-year agreement, which we have no problem doing the 5-year. We have no intention of leaving them. They've been fantastic. They also administer our retirement health savings accounts as well. So this is really just a formality to update the plan and have all the right agreements in place and hopefully save our employees a little bit of money when they buy and sell stocks.
Questions, comments? All right, anything on Cambridge Grove discussion-wise while we're here?
I would just ask that we hold that till 7 o'clock. I think there might be some residents coming.
Okay, all right. Well, we've got 5 minutes here. I'll start with the managers left coming to the right.
Let's see, caught me off guard. Just a reminder for those on Finance Committee, May 5th, we're having our next Finance Committee meeting. I think it's at 8 a.m. We're going to look at draft 2 of the budget and mid-year budget amendments, and then just got an update on the IT agreement that we're looking at with the city of Granville. So appreciate you being able to make that meeting. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Walsh?
You'll hear from me at 7 with the Cambridge Grove project.
Fair enough. Commissioner Burke? Commissioner Shane? Commissioner Chase? Commissioner Groders?
I attended a annual luncheon for the Area Agency on Aging today. It was a very nice presentation. They have a video, if you'd be so inclined to go to their website. So it's just a very nice video highlighting all of the services that they provide. One statistic that I thought was interesting is nearly 37% of their clients are 75 years and older. So as we discuss our senior center availability and addressing the needs of our seniors, we do need to keep in mind that are a fair significant amount of them on average that would probably appreciate our service.
Fair enough. All right. Commissioner Glanville?
Just that the Parks and Rec Committee is wrapping up our park audit, and again, we'll be talking about that at the May 10th meeting, so.
All right.
Come join.
Cool. Thank you. Commissioner Gilbert?
I'm good.
Madam Clerk?
Deputy. Just a reminder that May 3rd is the election for the 74th state rep.
All right.
Polls open at 7:30 a.m.
All right. Thank you. All right. We've got a couple minutes. The only thing I had on my list as it stands right now is on the May 9th agenda, I'll have a request for approval to help the Historical Commission out. And we're working out the nuances of this. We have one of our paid-on-call, longtime 10-year paid-on-call firefighters who has worked in a couple of museums. Now he's currently out on the lake shore, just lives over the city limits in Grand Rapids, but somebody that has I think like 20 years worth of museum experience and is doing a tremendous job with the Tri-Cities Museum. And as Commissioner Groders and I were talking about some strategies behind that, the why we have somebody within city staff, so to speak, that is very knowledgeable on the historical process. We were looking at the digital collection that he has really got going out in the Tri-Cities, and it'll be a tremendous help, I believe, to us. So we want to look at the strategy and how we're going to do that is to be determined because it's non-resident. We've gone outside the box just a bit on Parks and Rec. I do have concerns about precedent setting with that as it applies to other committees. So we think there's a way to do this, but it'll be somebody May 9th. You'll have something on there for that. Somebody has a tremendous background. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to.
I am very impressed with the experience and knowledge that he's willing to share with us. He has knowledge of different software, archiving software. He's in the process of digitizing their complete collection, and that is something that I've always had a vision for all of the items that we have. And he would also be a great help in helping us focus on what is actually pertains and related to Walker as opposed to other things that aren't necessarily connected with Walker. Mm-hmm. And we can't keep everything in, so I need help figuring out what we should keep.
Yeah. And it's something we've wrestled with for a couple of decades of having an expert like that on staff. We've tried to go the long route over the years, and I think there's a way to get there. So we'll figure that out for the May 9th, but just a heads up that that's coming in. And outside of that, I have nothing else on my list right now. We will actually, I'll watch. It is officially 7 o'clock. Look at that. I love that. So we'll call the 7 o'clock City Commission meeting officially to order. I'd like to invite Commissioner Gilbert to deliver the invocation and then lead us in Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner?
Thank you. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for being here with us today as we gather to serve on behalf of the people of the city of Walker. We thank you for all that you do to allow us to be here today, and we ask that tonight you offer us the guidance to do what is best for those who we are here to serve and represent in our community. And Lord, we ask that you protect those who are called to serve and protect us in these trying times, from our emergency responders to our military. And Lord, we thank you for all that you do to allow us to be here and represent the residents of our community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the audience to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. If I could please ask our Deputy Clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner Glanville,
Present.
Commissioner Groders,
Present?
Commissioner Heisinger Chase, Commissioner DeShane,
Present.
Commissioner Burke.
Present.
All right, we have everybody here. First on our list is consideration of the appointment of our city clerk. The process we just went through with the recent resignation of our prior city clerk, we had 2 applicants. One withdrew before we could even go into process, and at the 6 o'clock we had a interview session with our one prospective candidate, Debbie Goody, who already works in the city clerk's office part-time and has volunteered on a number of items over the years. So I'm going to open this up for discussion, dialogue amongst the commissioners here of takeaways. If you need to, you're more than welcome to reference back to your notes, but just basically talk about where do we want to go with this. So I'm going to open the floor up, and that's code for one of you to start off. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought Debbie was great. I appreciated her coming in and being able to go through the ever challenging interview process with this commission. I thought that it was great that she brings a lot of that elections experience. I think that's an important component to this. I feel there are some gaps that need to be covered as she onboards and begins to take on the role, especially when it comes to the administrative piece. And of course, the clerk job is partly elections, but it's partly making sure that these meetings operate properly and that the functions of city government are carried out in the manner that we need to. And there's a certain component of making sure that there's an understanding of how these meetings are to operate and what the rules are, and structurally how these agendas and all the things that we need to do get put together. But I think that she seems perfectly qualified and capable of taking those challenges on, getting to know that, and I have no issue moving forward with Debbie here as our next city clerk.
I didn't ask you my toughest question. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why? But that notwithstanding, I thought the interview went well. We talked a lot about what I think a number of us feel is the most important thing about the city clerk's position is that is making sure we're running a free and fair, nonpartisan election process, and you have a really good understanding of that already. So I'm confident that you'll be able to make sure we have all the checks and balances in place to make sure our citizens, feel comfortable and safe. And as you mentioned in the interview, I thought was a great comment about the number of parts of the process our citizens can watch during the several months you prepare for an election. Educating folks on that, of how we are very deliberate about being nonpartisan and open with our process is really important, and you're going to bring a lot to the table for us there, so thank you.
I'd agree with what both commissioners have said, and knowing that Jessica is there to help mentor, as well as Shannon, who has also been part of the city clerk's department in prior years. I'm satisfied with your qualifications, and I think you'll do a very good job. And, we're all here to learn. You can learn from us, and we can learn from you, and I know that you're fully capable of doing the job and doing it well.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments I've said previously, and I'm good moving forward with Debbie.
I am very much comfortable going forward as well. I would also encourage you and us to encourage you to take advantage of all the many training opportunities that are available through like Michigan Municipal League, anything like that, just to get better overall understanding of how it all, how everything works at this city level. And I think you'll do great, and happy to hear that you're willing to learn.
Yeah, just to add to that, with all that's been said, I think it's fantastic, the community, like you're embedded in the community through the schools already. A lot of folks are already familiar with you, and having worked in that meeting setting and understanding the nuance and importance of that open communication with a wide variety of constituents. I think it's definitely a plus that you bring to the position. So yeah, I'm good.
All right, well, I'll make it unanimous here. So, as I'd shared with the group, as we were meeting with Debbie earlier, having worked a couple of elections back to the presidential time frame, and boy, what a ride that was in 2016. Just from the turnout, but to, I think, when I reflect back to that time that we worked together, it was interesting because we're co-precinct chairs, but really Debbie was in charge, and Gary was just, what would you like me to do, because she had it so well organized. And we actually had a lot of new workers in that precinct. I think maybe one had already worked in election, so we had all kinds of brand new inexperienced workers, and the day ran super smooth. And I think the grasp and understanding of that, put her on the radar back then, that obviously she gets it, she understands it. And then I think one of the questions I had at the end, what changes would you make since you started doing this? And you'd mentioned about that training for new election workers, making it easier, some of the complexities sometimes that can get into this, and making sure that we're hitting the ground running was a pretty astute observation. So, but I reflect back to, you did that back in 2016. So I'm more than comfortable, supporting the rest of the commission here, and appointing Debbie Goody as our city clerk to fill the remainder of the term until November 2016, or I'm sorry, 2022, sorry. And then, ironically, the only person that's filed to run for city clerk in the November election is Debbie. So we'll have Debbie, I believe, for a while now. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion for nomination and support for Debbie's appointment.
I will make that motion.
Support.
Commissioner DeShane, support from Commissioner Burke. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, welcome aboard. So we should do a little round of applause. Now what we were going to do is, I think we have to do an official swearing in. So we have to do a unique one here, because technically, as you all know, we have to appoint our city clerk, which we've just done. We have to swear in our city clerk, and then our city clerk has to appoint and swear in a deputy city clerk. So we're going to go through a little process here. How is that?
That's our first training.
And if it would indulge the commission, because our communications manager cannot be here, I'm going to slide down and take some pictures. So.
Okay, go ahead and raise your right hand, and then repeat after me. I, and then state your name.
I, Deborah Gowdy,
Do solemnly swear to support
do solemnly swear to support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and to faithfully perform
and to faithfully perform
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of City Clerk
of City Clerk
of the City of Walker
of the City of Walker
to the best of my
to
abilities.
the best of my ability.
swearing in our deputy.
Right? I state your name.
I, Jessica Marion,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and to faithfully perform the duties of the office of Deputy City Clerk
and to faithfully perform the office of the
The
city,
d-
Deputy
sorry.
of City Clerk
of the City of Walker
of the City of Walker
to the best of my
to
ability.
the best of my abilities.
I think we could be around 100 years and never do this again, so it's going to be a unique situation. So. Congratulations. Congratulations again. All right. Yeah, we can do that. Thank you, commissioners, and we'll get a group photo afterwards then. All right, next on the list is the approval of the April 11th, 2022 City Commission meeting minutes. Are there any questions or discussion on said minutes? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
I'll make a motion.
Support?
Thank you, Commissioner Chase, Commissioner Groders. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, minutes are passed. Next on the list is public comment on any agenda items we may have this evening. Is there any public comment on agenda items that we have? Yeah, I'm sorry. Adam, if you come right up to the piece there, and then please make sure that red light, there's a button right there. If that red light's not on, it'll come on. Right in the middle. There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Floor is
Just
yours.
my name, Adam Glanville, 1878 Stratford Lane.
Thank you.
I don't really have any concerns or anything at the moment, but with the development going in the new phase of Cambridge Grove, I have another neighbor right next door who couldn't make it tonight because of a game, but he has a bunch of dying trees in the wetland next to his house, and he called numerous agencies and different people to try to get permission to take them down, and was denied and given all kinds of runaround. And eventually one of the trees fell onto his pool. Such a big tree, it smashed his concrete, leveled his fence, and wrecked part of his pool, and could have very easily killed someone. And we just thought it was really odd, that he was told he couldn't take those trees down. And then we just found out today, I don't know what the plan is, and I don't want to be a hindrance to the plan, but I just also want to make sure that the wetlands are being held to the same standards for everybody, the builders and the residents alike. And I don't know if there's going to be any kind of maps or anything that show what's going on, but it just seems to me like some of those houses, if they're going to respect those boundaries, are literally, there's three in particular, I think it's 66, 67, and 68. I mean, their backyard would literally go right down to a swamp. So that's all I wanted to comment for now.
Okay, thank you.
Good seeing you.
Thank you. And if there's a chance too that you'd pass along to the neighbor, either one of our second ward commissioners or myself, we'll be happy to take that phone call and let's get some specifics on what agencies. There's maybe a gap or two in there I'd like to. find out about.
My inclination is that it's probably Eagle that's the problem.
That's right
Because
where
it's
my mind's going.
wetland regulation, and they're gonna throw a fit anytime anyone tries to do anything, and that's been the experience all around the state from everyone unanimous.
Yep,
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. But if somehow one of us, I could defer to the two second ward commissioners, and I can help where needed as well, so. Cool, thank you. Anything else on public comment on agenda items? Please. As you come forward, just share your name and your address for us for the record.
My name is Eric Seif. I live at 1767 Wilson Avenue. So my property backs up to Cambridge Grove, and I'm kind of late to this discussion, late to kind of understanding what's going to happen with some of the changes moving forward, but my initial understanding when I purchased my property was that protected wetlands meant that there wouldn't be any changes to it. And now I kind of hear that there could be some changes being made, and I'm just kind of unclear on how that gets chosen, how that gets approved. Protected, to me, seems protected, not just a word. I don't even know if it's something I need to be concerned about quite yet, but depending on what's spoken about today or the actual dimensions of the lots that are going to get changed, would have, a bearing on how it's going to affect my property possibly, or, future properties around it. Most of the time when you hear a development go in, there's a lot of people that are around that development that you hear the comments that, water wasn't an issue before these new homes went in, and then the new homes went in, and now we have water problems with our property. It's a displacement of current water going to other properties, and that's what I'm concerned about. So I wanted to voice my opinion, and then hopefully hear some comments in the future here that's all being taken into consideration and won't be a problem.
Well, thank you, Eric. And then we'll have our presentation shortly, and there's another time at the end of the meeting if you're willing or want to stay through for additional public comment after as well, so maybe additional feedback that you might have. So,
is there any question and answer type of session that can happen?
We can probably have a little bit of dialogue, I think at the chair's discretion here, around that a little bit. It might be directed more towards city staff at that point, and the developer, to go from there, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, any other public comment on agenda items? All right, we're gonna move from that then. One of the neat things, I'm going to tee this up a little bit. I see everybody reaching for the hardware back there. One of the neatest things that we've had in this city in a number of years was the Walker Avenue bridge reconstruction, and really it was bringing an idea of bringing a road down to grade. And I know we've got Jason Washler from Prina Newhoff here, as well as Scott, and we'll ask Gary to come up as well. I don't think Scott gets enough credit for this, and I think some of the visionary items, I remember him in front of this governing body back some time ago and throwing, kind of an idea of what do we bring this road down to a grade. And I know it takes a village to put this together, but you do not get enough credit for some of the creative ideas, and go back to the even working with former Mayor Huizenga on the tunnel on Lake Michigan Drive. So these types of plaques, really, if you want to think of a legacy that you're leaving behind, it is these types of things, along with the development in the city. So
I didn't think you'd really go for it.
Yeah, that's good. Because this, when you look at it, it saved our community over $2 million, and some really creative thinking and how we did it. And quite frankly, I like this alternative better than the other. It's subjective opinion, but what a cool project. So let's talk about it.
And this is really Prina Newhoff's award. We kind of just came along for the ride, so I think if you want to explain it. I'll pass this around while you're doing that.
Yeah, please. Well, as Mayor said, my name's Jason Washler from Prina Newhoff. The mayor stole a lot of my comments, because I'm gonna take what Scott said and mirror it right back at him. This really isn't Prina Newhoff's award. The one thing that I've been drawn to with the city of Walker since I started working on projects with staff and this board is the culture that you've created that's partnership driven. So residents, business owners, this group, staff, between each other, without those partnerships, this project isn't possible. Lots of these difficult projects like Leonard Street that we worked on a couple years ago, the tunnel under Lake Michigan Drive, not possible without those partnerships. So I really want to reflect this right back to staff, because without Scott and his team, these projects don't happen. So we just get really lucky by being invited to be part of it. And so as a token of our appreciation, we put together this storyboard, which I just noticed as I took it out of the plastic has that nice bright blue sky, which we haven't seen a lot of. So this is a storyboard that we put together as part of the application that goes to ACEC which stands for American Council of Engineering Companies. And at the state level, I want to say there's you think there's maybe 40 applications,
I think there are
projects?
more than that.
40 or 50, let's say, applications. And this project was chosen in the top 5 in the state, which is a huge honor. I've been doing this 26 years, and the first time I've had this personally. So I'd just like to thank you for allowing us to be part of it. Thank Scott and his team for working with us and creating this culture that makes really cool projects possible. So this is for the city to hang probably in the wall. It's behind me in the hallway next to the pedestrian tunnel. Board that's very similar, so congratulations.
When you think back to, Gary, I know you've got some comments. One thing I just thought of too, we went through a lot with the pandemic affected the timing of this greatly, and our partners at DTA had some significant impact within their organization, really putting them behind. So there was a lot of moving parts to this from day one.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I forgot to mention was that we had progress meetings once the project was able to start. It was delayed because of COVID, but we had progress meetings weekly, and without exception, around the table at those meetings, we all commented on how well the team worked together. So it wasn't just the city against the contractor or vice versa. The city, the engineer, the railroad, Bristol, I mean, so many people were part of those progress meetings, more than any project that I've ever been involved in. And without all those parties getting along and working together for the common good, it would have been a lot different, I think. So, yeah, it just goes back to that culture that's been created.
So, Gary, I know you had a few words.
So I echo the same words Jason said. You know, without Scott's participation in this, thinking this would have never happened. But you also have to understand that he was part of the, the ACEC board and everything. In his humbleness, he did not want to go to the banquet, so I had to dress up in a suit and go, right? So, but he deserves a lot of that credit that's there, because, you know, when it snows and, you know, we get kudos for that kind of stuff. These guys get kudos for that, and it's these guys back here. So we just want to reemphasize that. So.
Well, as long as we're complimenting each other, you know. Gary's group, you know, we build this stuff, but we have to turn it over in a fashion where they can take care of it. So that gets back to what Jason was talking about. And if we don't have all that collaboration, we don't get to do these cool jobs. So, and we've got a few more on the horizon, so it's pretty exciting.
And by having that good team, it makes it easy for us for the next 20 years.
Well, and I think too, the multiple check-ins with the executives at Bristol, that there was a consistent theme of timely communication that was taking place, and they were very grateful. They were significantly impacted, obviously, but they were grateful. They knew short-term pain, long-term gain. If I could quote one of the executives there had said that, says we'll get through it, but we know what's going on, and that meant a lot. So well done. Round of applause from us as a city commission. So very appreciative. All right. Good, thank you much, and we will get that up in that hallway. All right, next on the list, we have 2 items in the consent agenda. We'll take these as one motion, no discussion if there's no issues. But first, before I do that, the administrative services agreement with MissionSquare Retirement, before I do a vote on this, ask for a vote on this, are there any other discussions or dialogue that needs to take place on this? See none. All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval on the expenditures in the amount of $336,284.38. And item B is the administrative services agreement with MissionSquare Retirement that we covered in our committee of the whole meeting at 6:30.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner DeShane and Commissioner Gilbert. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, motion passed. Next on the list, Frank, I believe you're going to take this one, is our discussion on the Phase 3 of Cambridge Grove. So floor is yours.
All right, well, good evening. And I see that we have several people in the room who were more involved in this project than I was. I'm pitch hitting for Tricia tonight. We gave her the night off. So I will give a few slides for our presentation, kind of an introduction and overview. And then we have the developer, Ken Verwert, in the room. We have Scott Connors, who's our city engineer, obviously, and was part of this. And this is an engineering-intensive site. And then also, Steve, feel free to jump in from a planning commission perspective. So I am not the expert on this one, but I'll try to cue it up for you. This is, as we discussed, Phase 3 for Cambridge Grove. It's a residential plan unit development from a zoning standpoint, but remember there's 3 ways to split property in Michigan, and one of them is through what's called the site condominium process. So this is a site condominium development. It's not a platted subdivision. It's a technicality, but we do have a separate ordinance for that. So what comes down procedurally is the Planning Commission goes through a thorough review of the site plan and also the site condominium plan, and then makes a recommendation to the City Commission, either to approve or deny or table, and they have moved forward a conditional recommendation to approve Phase 3 of this plan. So that was included in your packet. So we can definitely talk about that, but let's look at a couple of spatial things first. This project is ongoing. Obviously, if it's Phase 3, essentially the southwest corner of Richmond and Wilson generally. So if you look at the map there, you see Gordonshire and Kennewa. Those are the public streets that have been constructed in the first phases of this site condo developed. Single-family housing. And generally speaking, though not exact, is the red polygon that we threw on there just to kind of show you where Phase 3 is proposed for this site. Their plan is a much more specific, but we wanted to show you kind of a general overview to the area. It's an area that's one of those edge transition areas for the city, where you see that there's still a lot of open space in this area. Wilson Avenue is there. Kennewa is a dividing line with Talmadge Township, so you hit a farm edge very quickly. This site used to be farmed as well. So it's not in what I would call like a truly urbanized area. It's more of a suburban edge area of the city. So let's take a look at a bit of phase history. This project began back in 2006. Phase 1 had 17 units. Phase 1A was kind of a subset for 10 units in 2015. 2017, another 15 units went in, and now what's being proposed for Phase 3 is 25 units, all single-family homes. This is the plan that you folks have in your packet. It's part of the plan set that the Planning Commission reviewed, and this is a more specific identification of Phase 3, 25 single-family lots, extension of some public streets as well. And you can see one of the things that I know is going to come up tonight, and maybe Mr. Verwert can give us some background. When we did Phase 1 on this project way back when, we tried to take the regulated wetlands and put them in a conservation easement to the DNR, to the state of Michigan. So the plan says it's only the wetlands in Phase 1, but my recollection is the recorded document includes the whole regulated wetland area. And I think it may have been outside of the boundaries of the development plan. But somewhere out there, there's a conservation easement over the wetlands, and we recorded that to the DNR with their agreement for a reason, and really probably the things that you're going to talk about tonight, which is the city doesn't have jurisdiction over regulated wetlands. So if those issues are going to come up, you see those in Scott's recommendation letter to the Planning Commission. There are going to be DNR, or maybe in this case, Eagle permits to potentially impact those wetlands. That's outside of the purview of the state. However, building permits won't be issued until those permits have been obtained. So I just wanted to clarify that. The city doesn't regulate the wetlands. That's up to the state. Okay?
Can I ask a question there?
Sure.
So the building permits may not be issued, but it's my understanding that the land can be cleared. Is that correct?
And I am not the expert in wetland law, but what my understanding is that in a regulated wetland, you can remove vegetation above the surface without a permit. You cannot remove stumps, you cannot grade, you cannot fill without a permit.
Okay.
So if someone wanted to clear a tree or clear vegetation, as long as that doesn't fall on some kind of protected or endangered species list, then you're allowed to do that. One of the reasons we did and I'll just, so hopefully that answers your question. Above ground, you can clear, you can't take a stump out, you can't grade, you can't fill, okay? One of the reasons we wanted DNR involved in the conservation easement was to potentially identify any protected species on this property, whether it's plant, animal, et cetera, and nothing came back at that time. That's one of the reasons that DNR, that's their purview, and typically they'll let you know, through the conservation process, but we did not hear anything on that.
All right. Yeah, and full disclosure, I live in number 6 on the
All right,
map.
so you're lot 6, so right next door, just for my own editorial, lot 7 in phase 1, which is right here, is also heavily impacted by those wetlands.
Yeah, and that's the property that was damaged by the trees that fell out of the wetland.
And I'm, I don't know the specifics of that, and it's really not the city's purview.
No,
But
no.
my understanding is you can remove the trees, you can't remove the stump.
So, and if you can go back to the protected species in there too, we have some citizen scientists in the neighborhood, and my understanding is there are some protected frogs that live back there. There's a boreal chorus frog
Yeah.
and Blanchard's cricket frog.
And those are things that should be brought up as part of the DNR permitting, or Eagle permitting process. So, and again, I'm not deep in the process here, but if DNR says there's something protected out there, then that's a whole different ballgame, okay? That may impact the ability to change wetland boundaries, et cetera, change drainage patterns, what have you. So that's something definitely that's on the plate, I guess I would say. Now, that's anecdotal, so obviously that would need to go to the appropriate agency. The appropriate agency, in this case, you'd start with Eagle, and then they would reference the DNR. Okay? Sure.
So while we're on this, so potentially there's a scenario where we could approve this and DNR could disapprove sites 66, 7, and 8, for example. Is that true or not?
Yeah, that's true, and that's always the case whenever you involve a level of government above the city. The permitting process, and it could be an MDOT or Kent County Drain Commissioner, or in this case, Eagle/DNR. If they have jurisdiction, which they do in this case, then that may change their plans. And then Mr. Verwoerd may come back to the Planning Commission, or he can just eliminate lots. But I don't even want to get into that at this point. But yes, the answer is yes, there could be changes based on state intervention.
Okay, and then conversely, because we don't have the authority to manage this wetland, it really wouldn't be a proper basis for us to disapprove this, because we don't really have any decision authority on it anyway. And if we did, the proposed contractor would have and they have an action sort of against us as to why we're doing this without basis.
Yeah, it's a sticky wicket, and I think the best way to do it is what your Planning Commission and your staff has done to date, which is first of all, let's identify what we don't have jurisdiction over, which may be an issue, which they have done. Second of all, let's make sure that the site condo and the site plan for this planned unit development meet all the standards that the city has in place for grading, for stormwater, for soil erosion, for lot size, setbacks, those kind of things. So I think the city so far has done what the city should do, which is enforce our own rules. And there's still a list that the developer needs to work out. That's usually part of the stormwater process before building permits are issued. But yes, I would say that, city's taking care of the rules that we have, but also noting that the state in this case may have jurisdiction above us.
And Tom, just for my part, typically what we'll do is we'll just add a contingency that if another agency, or we'll make it contingent upon approval of Eagle permits, things like that, that we know are going to be a part of their process moving forward, so that we're not, I guess, creating a conflicting ruling for their part. I guess making it crystal clear that as long as you get the thing sorted out on that side, then you're good to go on this side, given our approval.
And just one other thing, is that, how much of this five-phase plan was kind of laid out back in 2005 or 6? Or is it sort of just, they own this whole parcel, this whole area, they have this broad vision, they plan to develop it, but it's really all undefined back then, or not?
As part of the rezoning, it was a complicated process to get through the rezoning, because I'll spare you the details, but there were a variety of platted lots all over this property with paper streets, and Mr. Verwoerd had to go through deplatting all of those and essentially removing the plat. But at that time, as part of the plan unit development rezoning, he was required to show what we call a preliminary area site plan, a PASP, for the entire site. So my understanding is, and based on my recollection, this is consistent with what was laid out back in 2006. And we try to do this for a variety of reasons. It's kind of the intent behind a plan unit development. Let's look at the whole property at once, and let's put the plan down. Things may change and need to be fine-tuned at final area site plan. But I believe that's what Mr. Verwoerd did back in 2006, laid out a plan for the entire site. Okay. Any other questions?
I interrupted you when you were on I think you had more to say about other parts of the project, didn't you? Traffic and such like that.
Well, I will say from a traffic standpoint, one of the issues that's come up, and Scott, feel free to chime in here, is the intersection of Richmond and Wilson, which I think that staff has been working behind the scenes to try and get that intersection improved to at least have 3 lanes. Much like MDOT has done south of O'Brien, where we have those old country sections of M11, at least let's make it 3 lanes. That's a work in progress, and hopefully we'll talk about that more from a capital improvement standpoint during budget here. But what Mr. Verwoerd was required to do as part of the Planning Commission approval was to make a financial dedication towards that future improvement of $50,000. And so what we have signed is a memorandum of understanding between the city and Mr. Verwoerd that he'll make 3 installment payments to put that money, you want to call it an escrow, but waiting for the improvement to be done at, Wilson Avenue in Richmond. And hopefully we can get those improvements done sooner rather than later, particularly on the city's legs. It's the M11 leg that is a little bit more of a challenge.
So the numbers I read in there said that it's about $200,000 for the light, and we were proposing he put in a quarter of that, and he said he's doing that.
He has done that.
Okay, but also the project itself is substantially more expensive, right? So is that something we'd look for MDOT to help us or others to help us do in the long haul?
In the long haul, and hopefully in the shorter than the super long haul, we will get MDOT in agreement to do the intersection improvements. And again, I don't want to speak for engineering or for Daryl, but it seems like there's some way that we should be able to make that a 3-lane intersection. The years ago, the city put in about $10,000 to properly illuminate that intersection with modern LED fixtures, and I think that's helped somewhat, at least to identify the intersection. But what we needed there, even if the traffic signal isn't going to be warranted for some time, is at least to make it 3 lanes. Because a 2-lane country section it gives people the ability to go around stopped traffic, and it's just not where we want to be.
Is it fair to say that phase 4 and 5 don't happen without some of those improvements?
Well, and this is where I don't want to speak for Scott or the developer, but my understanding is that phase 5 is the trigger for the improvements to Richmond and Wilson. So hopefully by the time that gets in, we will have made some progress, at least on the city legs of widening that intersection to allow 3 lanes. Well, there are private parks proposed, kind of pocket parks inside this development, and Mr. Verwoerd can talk about the extent of development and improvements there.
What's a private park? What's a private park? Does that mean I can't go there?
Well, technically, it's not public property, and where we have these parks proposed where you don't have direct frontage on a public street, usually they're owned and operated by the association in this case. The subdivision to the north has a public park in it, similar size, but it's fronted right on a public street, and therefore, I think it's Orchard Ridge Park. That's actually a public park.
Commissioners, any other questions for Frank while we're up here?
While you're thinking about it, here's what the Planning Commission did way back in September of '21. They recommended approval of Phase 3, and it would be in accordance with what they had dated 8/21 or 8/20/21 plan, which has since been updated, and then subject to all the conditions from the Planning Commission approval. So here's where you're at with your resolution 22-630. It's another conditional approval. Planning Commission conditions from 9/15/21 carry forward. The updated site condo plan dated 4/19/22 is the most recent plan set. So that is on your resolution 22-630. I have said more than enough, so I'm going to hand it over to the folks who know more than I do. But that is where you stand, and I will leave up just the graphic, and I'll get out of the way. So thank you.
All right, at this point, Scott, any other additional input?
Not really, maybe one point of clarification. There is not a trigger for those improvements out on Wilson, unfortunately. You could create one. You could say you can't get into Phase 5 before that's done, but the hard part there is we don't have any control over that. It's completely an MDOT decision. As Frank said, we could do our legs and widen those out, but that doesn't give us a center turn lane where you've got 55-mile-an-hour traffic. So we need some more collaboration to make that happen.
All right, Mr. Verwoerd, any additional insight you want to share with the commission?
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. All the work that everybody's put in on this. It's going to be a great project. If I could point to any of those screens, I don't know, you guys looking at one or not really? Yeah.
Yep, we all have them up here.
Got it up there?
Yep.
Can you see my finger or probably not? No.
Cannot, but if you let us know what number you're rolling over.
Well, when we look at the nature park area.
And actually, Ken, if you want, that is on wheels. Yep. Yep.
Everybody can kind of glance at this right here. So this, Frank eloquently worded it that this is almost exactly the same as what was proposed in 2006. One thing has changed, and that is that the wetland has increased in size. So when we did the wetland determination back in the day, it was a little bit smaller. Okay, so because of the time element with the Eagle, we had to redo another one after a decade. So that was just done this past summer, and that area had increased a little bit, okay? Part of that initial drainage, this drainage ditch right here, we created that ditch to alleviate some water coming off here so it wouldn't backpile up in here, which was permitted at the time. The DNR now, or through Barr and Associates, have declared this a little bit of a wetland as well, even though it was man-made. So that kind of addresses the second gentleman's comment. I'm not sure where he lives exactly, but had that not been put in, this could have been much worse than it actually is. So now we are very, very close with the Eagle permit. Matter of fact, it was supposed to be issued last week, Thursday. There's a Ms. Corey that is in charge of that, and we're working with John Vigna from Barr Associates. Used to be King McGregor. You're probably familiar with that name more than Barr, but so we're anticipating this any minute. I called him this afternoon late, and he hadn't heard a come back yet. So the area of impact is this old natural drainage way that ends up bringing it down and around through the farm field. So this is basically the only impact of the wetland area as you go forward here.
And that's, as you're pointing, Ken, it's actually, for the commissioners that can't see, you're pointing basically, if you look at the drainage from the P on Phase 3, you'll see that drainage ditch running, basically, I think that's east-west, or north-south. It's running to our right as you look at the picture, and then it takes a angle downwards and goes down towards the letters Phase 4, if that helps. All right, Ken, sorry, I just was making sure we're all there.
This was all farmed. A lot of times the farmer would leave that wetland or that waterway out, you know, a lot of times you'll see where they hang that or whatever. But that's where so that's gonna get picked up, brought through storm piping, and then brought back out to the retention. So, if anything, it'll probably, based on all the sciences and engineering, alleviate it quicker than the slow movement that it naturally does. So, and then it'll end up in this, which we built in phase 2, which is the on-site retention before it leaves the site. So.
Maybe Scott can explain the flow out and where this water ends up from a drainage standpoint.
I think like Ken just mentioned, it generally flows to the west and into Talmadge Township there through that pond that's labeled as Area Q.
Yeah,
So at our
it's
bottom right as we're looking at the
bottom of
picture.
plan.
Right, so I think when you look at that wetland, it's actually a little on a hill, if you can think of it that way. It's up at the top. And some of the ditches and swales that you see slowly drain that wetland, which kind of helps to moderate the height, so it stays pretty consistent. So that should be fairly consistent after the development as well, as long as all the stormwater improvements are in place. And we've looked at all those, and we're waiting to issue permits for that stuff when this DEQ permit comes in, Eagle permit comes in, excuse me.
Well, thanks, Scott. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Verwert? Any additional insight from a PC level?
No, I would just add that, as with all projects, the Planning Commission requires that the project not induce any greater burden on outside properties when it comes to stormwater and things like that. So that's always something that we're looking at, and always a part of the calculations that have to be done as a part of the development. And just for the residents' part, we have done that due diligence here as well.
Is there consideration of getting rid of numbers 66, 67, and 68 due to the wetland area, or, you know, because that natural park comes into those lots, right? Oh, that's where that line is. Well, isn't this wetland here?
Any thoughts on that one?
Those, again, if I kind of go back to the picture here, the dedicated wetland kind of is the dotted mesh area, right? And then these are your building envelopes right in through here, which are kind of obliterated here.
Like these? I can't really
When
see
we
it.
started with this project, Scott Connors had some forethought and said, hey, can you even fit a house on lot 66? And we did our due diligence and provided a nice home that could fit on it.
Can they build
Very
on this?
similar to lot 7 here, that kind of swung around right around in here, so we're able to position that. So we're confident that we can do that without impacting that wetland.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Commissioner DeShane. I was back there just this afternoon, you know, and there's quite a bit of standing water back there, so, right up into those parcels. So it'd be interesting to see how that gets, I mean, and I understand the drainage. I mean, I've been back there many times myself. So that main, right where it says 3, you can see there's like a little creek almost coming out of there. That's gonna be drainage, sewer drainage to take the overflow out of there. It's, like I said, it's pretty much a natural creek at this point. But that's, like I said, there's quite a bit of water back there. And I was questioning the same thing, if some of those lots are even buildable, so. But
Commissioners, any other further questions? All right, we have seen none. We have in front of us a resolution 22-630 to approve the final site condominium for Phase 3 of Cambridge Grove, which is 25 additional single-family units. And I'll look.
Can I ask one more question? Can you just go over one more time, Frank, for us, what, like, If we approve this this evening, there are still conditions, like will we have to come back and approve it again after those conditions are met, or how does that work?
Right now, the conditions are administrative, so there's a long checklist on this project, like we have for most subdivisions, or site conduct projects, particularly in this part of town, that will be checked off by your engineering department and your planning department, and Public Works, because of the public street component here, and Public Utilities, City of Grand Rapids. So there's a long list of administrative conditions. Wouldn't need to come back to the Planning Commission or City Commission unless something unusual comes up that would significantly alter the plan. Reduction in the number of lots, we would probably do that as an information item as opposed to, go back and re-review. There's a list in the ordinance that states what's a major amendment to a plan. And reduction in the number of units is usually considered a minor. But we would certainly keep you up to date if there's anything that, substantially changes on this plan. Otherwise, it'll be at the staff level.
All right, thanks.
All right, coming around the horn, do we have a motion for approval and support for Resolution 22-630?
Make motion.
I'll support.
Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner Chase, any other discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
I just feel like I have had a couple of residents reach out to me, and I'm not sure I can answer their questions clearly at this point, so I just want to make sure I have the information to share with them before I put my stamp of approval on it.
Okay. Fair enough, thank you. So Resolution 22-630 passes. Right now it's in a 6-1 vote. Next on our agenda is other public comment. Mr. Seif, anything else on this?
Yeah, just commenting on what they were talking about as far as the way the water drains. My property, if you don't mind me.
No, please.
My property is up here on Wilson, and there may be a flow that runs in this direction. There's also a flow that runs in that direction. And so that's where my concern lies is when they're looking at adding more soil, like 1,300 yards, I think I saw, to this area, that's going to place that water this way. There's a pond up here, and there's a lot of water easements on my property that run to Wilson. And you guys may be familiar, just knowing the city, out on Wilson, directly in front of my place, there's been many times where they've had to put up barricades because the water easements have overflowed right there, right on Wilson. So, these few lots right here, it may seem like not a big deal in the whole scope of everything, but just a little bit of water displacement going in the wrong direction could really substantially make a big difference. And that's where my concern is my property is the way it is right now, and I just don't want to see it change because of just the addition of some lots that could probably be taken off the plan.
What's the address? I can't see where you're pointing. What's your address?
What lot is number is yours, sir?
What lot is mine?
What? He's on Wilson.
He's
Okay, I'm
Wilson
sorry.
frontage.
Yeah, I'm up here on the other side.
Oh,
of
okay,
this
thank
one's
you.
here.
Okay.
There's a pond approximately right here. Yeah.
We saw it on one of, there it is.
Okay,
So here's my property right here.
all right.
Here's the pond, which naturally this drains to it. And then from here, there are easements that run this way, easements that run this way. And then just more lateral ones that have been put in by the previous owner just because there's so much water that's coming off from here, coming to my property. And I don't doubt that there's water going in that direction, but I don't want to see it pushed anymore this way. And like I was saying before, there's many times I'm in the landscaping business, and there's many times I go into a development and you meet with homeowners and they say, we got a serious water issue, we need to take care of it. And a lot of times that conversation starts with, these homes weren't here before. Now we have these 3 additional homes or a neighborhood that was put in behind us. Now our area is like trapped with water, and now we have a problem. So that's just my as far as the engineering is all taking that into consideration, then I'm all for it. I have no problem, because I knew those houses were gonna go in, I knew they were on the agenda, but I didn't know that they were gonna be adding fill and changing the wetlands. I thought wetlands were protected, I didn't understand that the city had no say in it, but I just assumed that where the border was is where it was, and it would stay that way. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could ask, just to build on that, a takeaway then is ask our city managers, maybe our assistant city manager and our city engineer, just as we're, and I should add our DPW director, just as we're having our staff discussions on the finalized pieces of that, just that we've got a heightened focus. I know we're gonna get it right, but let's double check, triple check, I think they're very fair questions, and wanna make sure we've got the water going in the right direction there. Fair? All right. Cool, thank you very much. Any other public comment while we're here? All right, seeing none, for the good and the order, any other commissioner, city manager comments? Seeing none, welcome to our new city clerk. Enjoy having you up here. Next meeting is May 9th, and we'll have a few items on the agenda definitely that evening. So I'll entertain a motion for approval and adjournment, or support for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Support.
I'm gonna, how do I hear? I heard echo. I'm gonna go with Commissioner Groders, so. All right, fine. All those in favor, please say aye. Oh, yes, before we leave, please take the black folder that you have. If you just put it right up on the front of the commission dais, we can grab those. Yeah, either. So we have a motion for adjournment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, everyone.